Hello, I'm State Representative David Millard of the 109th District in Columbia County. Many residents of our district have been asking questions about the state budget. I'm often asked where the process stands with this year's budget and how that affects the plan that needs to be passed by June 30th of this year. On today's program, I'll pose those same questions to my guest, Majority Appropriations Chairman, Representative Bill Adolph. Representative Adolph, welcome.
Nice to be here, Dave.
You know, Chairman Adolph, you being the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, you've been through a lot of appropriation hearings over a number of years. And I'd like to explain to my listening audience what your role as chairman of the Appropriations Committee entails.
Okay, thank you. First of all, it's an elected office, okay? I am privileged to serve the Republican caucus as its appropriations chair. And we are in the majority at this time, so I am the majority chair. As the majority chair, there's, including myself, 22 members of the Republican Party, House members on the committee. My counterpart, Chairman Mark Kozik of Allegheny County, there's 15 Democratic House members. Okay, so we are charged with putting together the state budget.
Chairman Adolph, as we know, the governor delivers his budget address to the joint House and Senate in early February. And then the process begins. Could you explain some of that process, please?
Yes, Representative, the governor gives his budget address in front of the joint session and lays out the total spend number, okay, and how the state's going to pay for it. As a result of that, we study the governor's budget, and we hold hearings 3 weeks, okay, both the House and the Senate. And each cabinet member, okay, whether it's the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Education, Secretary of Human Services, we also bring in presidents of state universities. We bring in the budget secretary. We finish with the budget secretary. Just like they do in local government, just like they do in county government. Talk to the heads of the department, and they show us their proposed budget per department. And we have the ability to get up and ask questions of the secretary. How many employees do you have? What was the increase in health benefits? What is the pension cost increase costing our taxpayers this year for the 1,000 employees that you may have? We had the state Supreme Court in front of us just today. So it's a tremendous opportunity for individual legislators to ask these pertinent questions. And also ask them, where's your cost reductions? What are you trying to do to save money? Okay, how many employees do you have, and how many actually come to work? Meaning that, do you have some spots that you have not filled? Okay, so there's all types of questions that you can ask, and you get into some policy questions too. Regarding education, regarding the insurance department, regarding the auditor general, the attorney general. So it's really a marathon. But at the end, we, with the help of our staff, we put all this information together. We hear some good news, we hear some bad news. We agree with some, we disagree with others. And then we try to put together a general fund budget that spends the amount of money necessary to keep Pennsylvania going forward, keeping our schools open, keeping our hospitals open, keeping our bridges going, our highways, et cetera, and also a balanced budget, because all the spending has to be paid for by the taxpayers, and we have to be responsible to them as well.
And I think that you've just highlighted the fact that it's not a blank check, that there is a nuts and bolts effort behind it. And can you highlight some of the biggest draws on the general fund where the revenue that comes in actually gets expended?
Yes, yeah. If you break it down per department, actually there's two departments that represent 80% of the $30.3 billion budget that we passed in December. And that is the Department of Education and the Department of Human Services. So all the other departments take up 20%, okay? And there's some cost drivers that have really made it difficult to keep up with. And that is our two pension systems, CSRS and PSERS. PSERS alone increased by $500 million this year, okay? And CSRS about $300 million. So you have those cost drivers that are costing the state, and we're up to about 75% of our gross wages is now employee benefits, between health care and the cost of the pension. So these are the type of things that we have to try to reform, okay? But the administration has to keep a close look at their expenses as well.
And I've had several constituents ask me, when are you going to pass a budget? And I let them know that we did pass a budget. And as you've mentioned, we passed not only a budget, but a balanced budget. Could you take us down the time frame of the efforts?
Representative, it is amazing, you know. First of all, the budget is due June 30th. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. By June 30th, 2015, the House of Representatives and the State Senate passed a balanced budget of $30.2 billion. The governor chose on June 30th to completely veto that entire budget. Completely veto that entire budget. First governor in my lifetime to ever do it. Okay? What did that mean? No money could go out other than salaries, because the state Supreme Court several years back ruled if you go to work, you get paid. Very little negotiations were done over the summer. And I believe the governor wanted to hold hostage the public schools, okay? Because they're opening up, okay? Opening up after Labor Day. Now, obviously, they get local funding as well. Because if they relied only on state funding, there would have been no money for them, okay? So, the schools opened up, but not everything was getting paid, okay? We had rape crisis centers, domestic abuse centers, okay? A lot of our nonprofits were not getting paid. So we tried to do a stopgap budget, which is an emergency budget, a 90-day emergency budget, okay? Just to get the money out there. We passed it, the Senate passed it, the governor vetoed that as well. Negotiations continued, and we increased our spending by $100 million in a budget that passed the House and the Senate in December. $30.3 billion budget. Increased public education by $400 million. The governor signed the budget and blue-lined some unbelievable line items, such as the Department of Corrections. How can you eliminate 50% of the prison budget? About $7 billion altogether, okay, he blue-lined. Our schools, our public schools, our neighborhood public schools will run out of state funding once again. Some of them will start running out of money, some of the poorer schools, in the next week or two. Okay? But by April, I believe, Representative, most of our schools will be in a financial difficulty. And they're borrowing money, as you heard from the Auditor General today, at a higher rate than what they did before. So we passed a budget. The governor signed it, but he blue-lined and that's his constitutional authority to do that. But we did what we had to do and pass a budget and put it on his desk.
And every time that a governor creates a new ceiling, that ceiling becomes the floor for the next year. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's a key. That's a key. Well, what I would like to do is I would like the governor to reconsider his blue lines, and we could do supplementals to get that correct appropriation back on his desk and have a $30.3 billion budget and the necessary revenue to go along with it, which I believe was about $300 million in new revenue. We were going to do that with some casino licenses, et cetera, okay? Because what we can agree on is that if you have a structural deficit coming up the following year, the worst thing you can do is increase spending the year before, because you're just multiplying your problem, okay? And it's always been my belief that you can take care of your structural deficit, okay? But you don't increase spending by double digits at the same time. I don't believe the taxpayers of Pennsylvania would appreciate that. And the governor is proposing about an 11% increase in spending over last year. And I don't believe you need to do that at the same time you're fixing the structural deficit. So we need to compromise, and I think the legislature is willing to compromise, but the governor has not budged off his tax and spend policies yet.
Well, and in the few minutes that we have left, could you highlight some of the new taxes that the governor has proposed?
Yes, an increase in personal income tax. And the folks that pay that is the working folks, okay? They're your small businesses, your wage earners. And the governor is proposing a increase of personal income tax to the rate of 3.4%, retroactive back to January 1st, 2016. So if we pass the budget, if we pass the budget sometime in June, in order to collect 3.4 for the entire 12 months, we'd have to go back to January. You have to figure out it's going to cost you about 4% for the next 6 months. So that's the big one. But then he expands the products and services that the state charges a 6% sales tax. Basic cable television. Some of the enjoyments that some of our seniors have at home, Representative, is sitting down at night watching cable television and watching the news and watching a good movie. Well, that will now be subject to a 6% sales tax. Cigarettes would go up $1 a pack. There would be taxes on e-cigarettes, tobacco products. Some of our small businesses would lose what they call a vendor's discount for collecting the sales tax. It just goes on and on. 15 new taxes altogether in order to balance the governor's proposals.
Well, Chairman Adolph, you've certainly highlighted what it takes to get to what the governor wants.
Yes.
And contrasted that with how we do pass a balanced budget based on incoming revenues.
That's correct.
And I certainly want to thank you for shedding that light on our efforts here in Harrisburg. I know that my constituents will certainly appreciate having that information, as I do. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
That's all the time we have for today's program. I'm Representative David Millard. If you have questions about what we've discussed or need assistance with any state matter, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching.